Orphaned extraterrestrials, their hopes dangling with empty stockings, awoke to find them unexpectedly laden. Before we embark on this narrative, kindly leave a brief greeting in the comments, sharing your viewing location. Your engagement significantly bolsters the channel's reach. The haven for discarded souls hovered in the vicinity of a fading crimson star, far at the galaxy's edge, a refuge for the orphaned offspring of numerous civilizations, awaiting families that would never materialize. Within its frigid metallic corridors, 73 young beings found solace in each other's company, a bulwark against a loneliness no climate control could alleviate. A human transport vessel made a routine provisions call 3 weeks prior to the 25th of December, by Earth's standard calendar. No one anticipated any extraordinary events, certainly not the institution's administrator, a towering insectoid Manarian named Clash, who met the resupply team with the same weary acceptance he extended to all visitors. The docking clamps secured with their customary metallic thud, and Clash prepared himself for another sterile exchange, devoid of warmth or genuine interest. Suppliers arrived and departed with predictable regularity. They delivered their wares, collected their remittances, and left without ever truly apprehending the essence of this place. The sanctuary of lost souls held a distinct reputation in the galactic fringe. It was the final destination for neglected children, largely forgotten by the cosmos. Clash had resigned himself to this reality 15 years prior, upon assuming his post. Someone had to oversee these youngsters, and his species held obligation in higher esteem than personal contentment. He discharged his duties with efficiency and diligence, ensuring the children received sustenance, education, and protection. However, he had long ago learned to shield his emotions. The pang of disappointment was too profound when charges aged out of the system with no viable prospects, when adoption requests were invariably denied, when the vastness of the galaxy repeatedly underscored that these multiracial orphans simply didn't belong anywhere. Nathan Brooks disembarked from the shuttle, cradling supply containers. His weathered countenance and silvering temples bore the mark of a man who had witnessed too many of the cosmos's shadowed recesses. He was merely a freighter pilot, unremarkable in the grand scheme, transporting medical provisions and food sustenance to remote settlements. His flight suit, though worn, was impeccably clean, mended in several locations with meticulous care that hinted at limited means but profound personal dignity. He moved with an unhurried economy of motion cultivated through extensive periods in zero-gravity environments, each step deliberate and steady. Clash observed all this with his multifaceted eyes, meticulously cataloging details as was his ingrained habit. Another human, middle-aged, likely supplementing a pension or settling outstanding debts with cargo runs. They all carried their own histories, their own motivations for choosing the solitary existence of space over terrestrial life. This individual would prove no different. Yet, as Nathan traversed the orphanage's hallways and beheld the children, a subtle shift occurred in his demeanor. Clash registered it instantly due to its sheer rarity. Most suppliers maintained a direct gaze forward, discomforted by the sight of so many young beings confined within a limited area. They expedited their deliveries, eager to put the melancholic surroundings behind them. Nathan paused his progression. He carefully set down his crates and knelt, bringing himself to the eye level of a diminutive Torgalian girl, who had been observing him with hesitant curiosity. His movements were measured and non-threatening, a posture that bespoke experience with apprehensive creatures. "Greetings," Nathan murmured to the small violet-furred child. "My designation is Nathan. May I inquire as to your name?" The Torgalian girl inclined her head, her 6 delicate appendages folding against her petite frame in a protective stance. She offered no verbal reply, but her expansive golden orbs fixated on him with an intensity that suggested she was imprinting every facet of his face. "She is named Pip," Clash interjected from behind Nathan. "She is not very talkative. She has been with us for 4 years, having been approximately 1 year old by her species' developmental benchmarks." Nathan's jaw tightened, almost imperceptibly. For years spent within these stark metallic halls, enduring ration defection, he slowly reached into his pocket and withdrew a nutrient bar, a type compatible with most carbon-based biochemistries. He extended it towards Pip without advancing further, allowing her the agency to decide whether to approach. Pip's gaze flickered from the bar to Nathan, then to Clash. The director clicked his mandibles in what might have been an expression of assent. "It is safe, Pip. You may partake if you wish." The youngling crept forward on her 6 limbs, exhibiting the peculiar grace characteristic of her kind. She swiftly retrieved the bar and withdrew, yet she did not retreat entirely. She settled just beyond his reach and meticulously unwrapped the confection, her attention fixed on Nathan throughout. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thin and hesitant, as if unsure whether addressing an adult was permissible or would incur reprisal. "You are most welcome, Pip," Nathan replied. He remained in his kneeling position, making no move to rise or close the distance. "I trust we may forge a friendship." Pip took a small bite of the nutrient bar, and a subtle perkiness registered in her auditory appendages. The flavor, it seemed, was agreeable. She consumed another bite, with greater assurance this time. Other children had begun to notice the newcomer. They emerged from alcoves and shadows, drawn by inquisitiveness, yet restrained by apprehension. Nathan perceived them all with a clarity that caused a poignant ache in his chest. There was little Pip, a Torgallian adorned with soft violet fur and 6 delicate limbs, not exceeding 5 human years in age. She regarded Nathan with wide golden eyes that had long since relinquished hope. Adjacent to her sat Kriebel, a young Dravenian, whose crystalline skin captured the faint illumination, casting kaleidoscopic patterns upon the walls. His form comprised living crystal, subtly shifting through the visible spectrum with his movements. A breathtaking display that ought to have evoked delight, but instead seemed solitary amidst these somber corridors. There were Felithars, diminutive feline beings with expressive caudal appendages and retractable talons. There were Breviques, distinguished by their reptilian scales and intelligent gazes. There were Scalarians, requiring thermal lamps for survival, huddled together beneath the facility's solitary heating apparatus. There were Jolovians, possessing translucent integument that revealed the bioluminescent organs beneath. There were species Nathan couldn't readily identify. Young beings from distant sectors whose progenitors had perished or abandoned them far from their homelands. Each distinct species bore the same imprint of quiet desertion. Nathan discerned within their eyes what Clash had ceased to perceive years ago. He saw children, not mere statistical data, not dietary prescriptions or medical considerations, not problems requiring management. He saw children, young beings who ought to have been engaged in play, laughter, and the comforting embrace of security. Instead, they sat in corners, observing strangers with guarded expressions. Nathan rose slowly. Clash detected an uninterpretable emotion on the human's face, perhaps sorrow, perhaps indignation, or perhaps resolute determination. Whatever its nature, it radiated with an intensity that unsettled the director. "How many?" Nathan inquired softly. 73 are presently housed here," Clash responded. "Ages span from 6 months to 17 years, according to various species metrics. Our capacity extends to 80. We receive new residents at consistent intervals as circumstances dictate. Vessels discovered adrift with orphaned crews, planets afflicted by catastrophic events, families incapable of providing for offspring due to financial or medical constraints." Nathan's hands clenched and unclenched at his sides. 73 children. 73 young beings maturing within this sterile facility, characterized by its flickering lights, recycled air, and walls that echoed with profound loneliness. He surveyed the common area where they stood, noting the threadbare furnishings, educational displays that were a decade obsolete, and toys fashioned from inexpensive plastic rather than the interactive learning tools he knew to exist. This was not negligence, precisely. This was the consequence of a galactic infrastructure stretched beyond its limits. When budgets were allocated to other priorities, when children without familial bonds became invisible to those who governed resource distribution, Nathan concluded his delivery and departed. Clash presumed that was the extent of it. The galaxy teemed with individuals who experienced fleeting pity for orphans but offered no tangible assistance. He recognized that expression, that momentary surge of shocked compassion when someone truly perceived these children for the first time. However, that emotion invariably receded. Individuals returned to their comfortable routines. The orphans remained. Clash had underestimated Nathan Brooks. 3 days later, Nathan returned. He was not scheduled for another resupply mission. The station's docking control queried his authorization, perplexed by his request to land at the orphanage facility. He arrived unaccompanied in a chartered shuttle that likely represented a significant financial strain. He carried something unconventional, a sizable crate filled with vintage human books, the tangible paper kind that had become an anachronism in an era of data pads and holographic interfaces. Clash met him at the airlock, his mandibles clicking in bewilderment. His compound eyes meticulously tracked the crate Nathan bore, radiating visible confusion. "Nathan, what brings you back? We possess sufficient provisions for another month. If there was a deficit in the delivery, you could have simply transmitted a correction order. There was no necessity for a personal return." Nathan carefully placed his crate on the ground, as though it contained an object of immeasurable value rather than antiquated technology. The volumes within were well worn, their covers bearing the indelible marks of numerous readings. Some exhibited cracked spines, while others featured pages creased by countless hands. These were not rare collector's items. These were books that had been cherished. "I wish to read to the children," Nathan stated simply, "if that is agreeable." Clash's compound eyes studied the human for a prolonged interval. In the 15 years he had managed this institution, no one had ever expressed a desire to spend time with the children for its own sake. Volunteers made occasional appearances. Court-mandated community service hours were logged and subsequently forgotten. University students gathered data for sociological studies on interspecies child development. Government inspectors verified compliance with mandated forms. But no one visited simply to engage with children who were not their own, who shared no biological lineage, and who offered no discernible social advantage or professional advancement. "Naturally," Clash responded slowly. "I believe they would find that agreeable." He escorted Nathan to the common room, where the afternoon educational session had just concluded. The children were in their designated leisure period, a generous designation for unstructured time, during which they were expected to entertain themselves quietly with the limited resources at their disposal. Some were occupied with homework assignments on outdated learning tablets. Others engaged in simple games with well-used pieces. Many simply sat, their gazes fixed upon the walls, lost in contemplation that should not burden young minds. "Pardon me, everyone," Clash announced, his translator rendering his clicking mandibles into standard galactic dialect. "We have a visitor. This is Mr. Nathan Brooks. He has come to read you stories." The children looked up with varying degrees of interest and apprehension. Visitors were an infrequent occurrence, and their arrivals rarely heralded positive outcomes. Typically it signified inspections, interrogations, and adults discussing them in the third person, as if they were incapable of comprehension. Pip, who had been ensconced in a corner with a puzzle she had completed countless times, tilted her head in recognition, the human who had presented her with the nutrient bar. She rose slowly on her 6 limbs and approached with caution. "Hello again, Pip," Nathan said, a warm smile gracing his features. He lowered himself to sit cross-legged on the floor, bringing his eye level to that of the children. "I have brought some of my favorite stories to share with you. Would you like to hear one?" Pip nodded, her golden eyes wide. Other children began to gravitate closer, their curiosity overpowering their reservations. Crable drew near, his crystalline form refracting the overhead illumination into a ballet of dancing colors. A young Felithar named Whisker padded forward on silent paws, her tail twitching with interest. More followed, drawn by the novelty of an adult who chose to sit amongst them on the floor rather than loom above. Nathan opened the first book, a compilation of human fairy tales. Its cover was faded, its edges softened from frequent handling. He traced his fingers over it with evident affection before turning to a story marked with a frayed ribbon. "This tale is titled Jack and the Beanstalk," Nathan began. "It concerns a boy who resided with his mother, and they were quite impoverished. One day, Jack exchanged their sole cow for some magical beans." "What are beans?" inquired a small Brevik child named Tenna. "They are seeds that grow into plants you can consume," Nathan explained patiently. "On Earth, humans cultivate numerous varieties of beans for sustenance. In this narrative, these beans possess a special quality because they are magical." "What constitutes magic?" inquired Crable, his crystalline voice chiming like wind chimes. Nathan smiled. "Magic is when something occurs that defies conventional possibility, when the established rules of existence are altered by inexplicable forces. Within stories, magic can manifest wondrous events." He continued the narrative, detailing Jack's ascent up the colossal beanstalk to a celestial castle. how he outwitted a monstrous giant, and how he brought treasures back to his mother. The children listened with rapt attention. They had encountered narratives before, didactic tales designed to impart moral lessons or cultural values. But this was different. This was a story about a disadvantaged boy who achieved heroism, a narrative about a diminutive figure overcoming a formidable adversary, a story where magic improved circumstances. Upon its conclusion, numerous appendages, hands, paws, and crystalline limbs, shot upward, brimming with questions. "Did the giant perish?" inquired an elder Jalovian boy. "The account does not definitively state," Nathan replied truthfully. "It concludes with the giant's fall from the beanstalk, but its ultimate fate remains undisclosed. Occasionally, stories permit the audience to determine the resolution." "Was Jack frightened?" inquired Whisker, her feline ears inclining forward. "I surmise he experienced considerable fear," Nathan stated. "However, he also demonstrated courage. Being courageous does not imply an absence of fear. It signifies undertaking actions despite experiencing fear, because those actions are necessary." "Why did his mother not descend the beanstalk as well?" Pip inquired. "That is an exceptionally astute question," Nathan observed. "I conjecture it might be due to her needing to remain behind and manage affairs there, or perhaps because Jack desired to prove his capability to assist his family. The story was composed a considerable duration ago, and occasionally, ancient narratives lack complete explanations." The questions persisted for nearly an hour. Nathan addressed each one with patience and thoughtfulness, never dismissing a query as trivial or self-evident. He treated their curiosity with profound respect, their intellect with sincere acknowledgement. He met each child's gaze as they spoke, dedicating his undivided attention as if their pronouncements held the same significance as any adult's. Clash observed from the doorway, his mandibles emitting a soft clicking sound of astonishment. The children were engaged in a manner he had never witnessed. They were thinking, questioning, and imagining. They were not being treated as burdens or data points, but as sentient beings capable of comprehending complex narratives and formulating their own interpretations. Nathan devoted 4 hours that day to the common room, surrounded by alien children who had never before heard human fairy tales. He recounted stories of mythical beasts and valiant knights, of sentient animals and enchanted woodlands, of orphans who ascended to heroic stature and discovered their extraordinary destinies. His voice was warm and steady, modulating for distinct characters, building suspense during thrilling passages, and softening for poignant moments. He seemed unperturbed when Pip, midway through Cinderella, settled onto his lap, seeking the physical comfort that the orphanage staff, due to their demanding schedules, were seldom able to provide consistently. He simply adjusted his posture to ensure her ease and continued reading. When Krebel's crystalline digits gently touched the illustrations with a sense of wonder, inadvertently smudging them slightly, Nathan did not reprimand him. Instead, he tilted the book to allow the light to illuminate the artwork more brilliantly. As the time for the evening repast approached, Nathan assisted in distributing the children's sustenance. He diligently familiarized himself with the dietary requirements of each species, inquiring about their nutritional needs with genuine interest. He observed that Tenna's portions appeared diminutive, and discreetly mentioned to Clash that brevique juveniles typically necessitate elevated protein intake for optimal scale development. His observation was accurate. Clash had been rationing to conserve resources. However, he made a mental note to adjust Tenna's allocations accordingly. As Nathan prepared to depart, having pledged his return, the children congregated around him with a palpable desperation that deeply affected him. "Please return," Pip pleaded, her small paws clinging to his sleeve. "I promise," Nathan assured them. "I shall return in 2 days. I give you my word." The children harbored doubt. Adults invariably made promises. Yet, promises held little weight when one was an orphan. People departed and never reappeared. Such was the fundamental reality of the galaxy. But Nathan returned precisely 2 days later, fulfilling his promise. And 2 days after that, and again, each visit accompanied by additional books, more stories, and a greater portion of himself. He committed their names to memory, all 73 of them. He painstakingly learned to pronounce the clicking consonants of Manarian names, the harmonic vowels of Jolivian dialects, and the guttural syllables of brevique designations. He carried a small ledger, wherein he meticulously recorded each child's appellation, their species, their individual preferences, their deepest fears, and their most cherished dreams. Within a mere week, he ascertained that Pip harbored a fondness for narratives involving flight, driven by her aspiration to pilot starships in the future. He knew that Cribble possessed an insatiable fascination with light and color, dedicating hours to observing the manner in which his form refracted the overhead illumination. He understood that Whisker possessed exceptional intelligence, yet suffered from an anxiety that induced a state of paralysis when directly questioned. He recognized that Tenna compulsively sketched images, utilizing her talents to etch designs onto any available surface due to a lack of proper artistic implements. He learned that a small Scalarian named Flicker required precisely 18 minutes of exposure to the heat lamp to achieve optimal comfort, no more and no less, and that the facility's timers were notoriously unreliable, often resulting in Flicker enduring excessive or insufficient exposure. Nathan discerned the specific dietary needs of various species, identified which were nocturnal, and understood their struggles with the facility's diurnal schedule, as well as their apprehensions regarding loud noises, intense light, or sudden movements. He procured special comestibles for a young Felithar named Whisker, whose species necessitated a higher protein content than the standard rations provided. He brought soft coverings for the cold-blooded Scalarians, who huddled together at night, never quite attaining adequate warmth beneath the single heating unit. He observed details that the staff had long since ceased to notice. He noted that the ventilation system in the southern wing emitted a whistling sound that proved disruptive to the sensitive auditory perception of the Felithar children. He recognized that the lighting spectrum was calibrated for human visual acuity, but induced discomfort in species possessing distinct optical ranges. He understood that the meal schedules were arranged for administrative convenience rather than accommodating the biological imperatives of the diverse species. Nathan lacked the capacity to rectify these systemic deficiencies. He was, after all, merely a freighter pilot with limited financial resources. However, he could procure earplugs designed for Felithar auditory sensitivity. He could furnish colored filters to be affixed over lights in specific areas. He could provide nutritional supplements to aid children whose biological rhythms were disrupted by consuming sustenance at times incongruous with their species' natural patterns. More importantly, he could offer his presence. He could demonstrate consistent and reliable attendance until the children began to entertain the notion that this particular adult might be different. Perhaps this keeper of promises would not vanish like all the others. Clash observed this profound transformation with mounting bewilderment, which gradually evolved into a state akin to reverence. The human, as he learned through casual conversation, possessed no offspring of his own. Nathan, a bachelor, had no familial ties to any of these species, nor did he possess a political agenda or religious calling that guided his actions. He consistently appeared day after day, offering these neglected children something they had never experienced before: genuine, focused attention. The kind that recognized when Pip was troubled by nightmares and required extra comfort. The kind that recalled Krebble's preference for the color violet. The kind that celebrated Whisker's triumph in answering a question without succumbing to fear. This was not the perfunctory kindness of paid employees fulfilling their duties, but authentic warmth stemming from a deep concern for them as individuals. Nathan embraced children who craved physical connection. He shared tranquil moments with those who valued solitude. He engaged in gentle play with those who needed physical activity. He tailored his approach to accommodate each child's unique requirements, rather than imposing his own preferences upon them. Consistency, perhaps, was his most profound offering. Nathan arrived when he stated he would. Should his transportation schedule alter, preventing his usual visit, he would communicate the change and arrange an alternative. He made no commitments he could not uphold. When he promised an item, it was delivered. When he vowed to return, he did. For children who had endured repeated abandonment and disappointment, this dependability proved transformative. One afternoon, approximately 3 weeks into Nathan's visits, Clash discovered him seated on the common room floor. Pip was slumbering in his lap. Creel was nestled against his shoulder, engrossed in a book about interstellar travel, and 4 other children were sprawled around him, utterly at ease. Nathan was softly reading from a tablet, recounting a human narrative about a wizarding academy. His voice had become subdued as several of the youngsters had drifted off to sleep. The scene exuded such domesticity, so alien to the institutional environment, that Click halted in the doorway, utterly captivated. Nathan looked up, offering a contrite smile, careful not to stir the sleeping Pip. "Forgive me," he murmured, I realize it's nearly time for dinner. I'll rouse them shortly. There's no urgency, Klikesh responded quietly. Allow them their rest. They are at peace, and their contentment was evident. Click observed their relaxed postures, the serene expressions on their slumbering faces. These children, who typically slept curled defensively or started awake at the slightest sound, were now sleeping soundly and with absolute trust, nestled against a human they had known for less than a month. How do you achieve this? Click asked, gesturing to the tableau. How do you connect with them so swiftly? I've been here 15 years, and I've never witnessed them so comfortable with anyone. Nathan pondered the question with gravity. I believe it's because I'm not attempting to fix or save them. I'm simply striving to understand them, to see them for who they truly are. Every child is distinct, isn't that so? Pip thrives on physical affection and tales of valiant heroes. Creel requires patience and answers to his incessant inquiries about how things function. Whisker needs gentle encouragement and absolutely no pressure. Tenna requires an outlet for her creativity and an appreciative audience for her artwork. They are all individuals with unique needs and varied talents. He gazed down at Pip, his fingers tenderly stroking her soft violet fur. Within the systems, in the orphanages back on Earth, we treated children as problems to be solved. We employed standardized procedures and one-size-fits-all methodologies. It proved ineffective. It never works. Children are not puzzles with singular solutions. They are people, complex, unique individuals who deserve to be recognized for their intrinsic selves, not categorized by their perceived deficiencies. A peculiar sensation stirred within Click's thorax once more, the same feeling that arose when Nathan uttered statements that, while seemingly straightforward, were in fact revolutionary. The Mantarian director had received extensive training in child development, had studied multi-species care protocols, attended numerous conferences, and earned various certifications. Yet Nathan, devoid of any formal training, grasped a fundamental truth that Clash had somehow overlooked during his 15 years of processing intake forms and managing limited budgets. These were not simply orphans. They were children who found themselves without parental care. The distinction was significant. Nathan, Clash stated slowly, may I ask you something personal? Of course. Why did you return after that initial delivery? What prompted you to invest your time in these children? Nathan remained silent for a considerable moment, his hands continuing to gently caress Pip's fur, while Krebbel emitted soft, chiming sounds in his sleep. 3 weeks into Nathan's visits, he arrived bearing a substantial bag and an expression of barely contained exhilaration. I wish to introduce them to a human tradition, Nathan informed Clash. Something we call Christmas. It's a time when humans celebrate by offering gifts to those they hold dear. Clash's mandibles twitched. Most species have gift-giving customs. What makes this one distinct? Nathan's smile widened. It's not solely about the presents. It's about the sentiment, the knowledge that someone considered you, that someone genuinely cares whether you awaken with joy. For these children, who have never experienced that, I thought perhaps we could offer them a single day where they feel loved by someone in this vast, indifferent galaxy. A peculiar sensation bloomed within Clash's thorax. His species was incapable of tears, but had they been, he might have wept. Instead, he simply inclined his head. What do you require? Over the ensuing week, Nathan dedicated himself to educating the children about Christmas. He spoke of the human figure known as Santa Claus, a benevolent entity who delivered presents to youngsters. He described the practice of adorning trees, singing carols, and hanging stockings by the hearth. But Director Clash, little Pip inquired, her ears drooping slightly. We don't have a fireplace? That's perfectly acceptable, Nathan assured her. We'll hang them anywhere. The enchantment remains potent. What exactly is a stocking? Krebbel asked, tilting his crystalline head. Nathan displayed images from his datapad. It resembles a sizable sock. You hang it on Christmas Eve, and in the morning, it's filled with small gifts and treats. But we don't have stockings, stated an older child, a Bravik girl named Tenna, her scales dulled from malnutrition. Nathan's smile was gentle. We shall craft them together. That too is an integral part of the tradition. He produced fabric, thread, needles, and scissors. For 3 days, the orphanage's common area transformed into a bustling workshop. Nathan guided them in cutting and sewing, assisting tiny fingers, claws, and crystalline appendages in creating stockings of every conceivable color and form. Some were exquisitely made, meticulously stitched by the elder children. Others were haphazard collages held together by sheer determination and an excessive amount of adhesive. Each one held immeasurable value. Pip's stocking was a vibrant purple adorned with silver stars. Pribble fashioned his from transparent material, allowing light to refract through it. Whiskers featured fish motifs, which she found amusing. Tenna's was a rich green and gold, reminiscent of her homeworld, a place she barely recalled. On December 24th, Earth Standard Time, Nathan assisted all 73 children in hanging their stockings throughout the common room. They dangled from conduits and railings, from door frames and light fixtures, forming a vibrant, chaotic spectrum of hope and handcrafted aspirations. That night, the children retired to their beds with an unfamiliar sensation stirring within them: anticipation. For the first time in their young lives, they had something concrete to look forward to. Nathan remained behind with Click in the director's office. "I have a confession to make," Nathan admitted. "I cannot afford to fill all these stockings. I exhausted my funds on the fabric and supplies. I had hoped to arrange something, but cargo running isn't particularly lucrative. I apologize. I promised them magic, and I fear I will disappoint them." Click was silent for a long interval. Then, he uttered words he hadn't spoken in his 15 years of managing the facility. "Allow me to make some inquiries." In the hours that followed, what Clash uncovered rekindled his faith in a galaxy he had presumed had forgotten these children. He contacted the medical supply company that generously donated expired medications. They pledged to dispatch toys. He reached out to the food service provider that supplied rations at cost. They committed to providing treats and candies. He contacted the maintenance contractors, the fuel suppliers, and the waste management firm. Each and every one had a history of collaboration with the orphanage. Each had encountered Nathan during his deliveries. Each had observed his respectful and considerate treatment of their invoices and cargo. "A human who expresses gratitude to the delivery dock workers," the medical supply CEO remarked to Clash. "A human who remembers our names and inquires about our families. Naturally, we will assist. Inform us of your needs." The response was overwhelming. Within hours, Clash's office was inundated with commitments. A toy manufacturer pledged a substantial shipment. A book publisher offered a collection of volumes. A clothing company committed to providing warm garments suitable for every size and species configuration. A confectioner, a Jolivian who had crossed paths with Nathan once at a trade station, personally delivered containers of sweets compatible with every known biological system. However, the most remarkable message originated from an unexpected source. The communication came from the crew of the cargo freighter, the Stellar Wanderer. Klikesh did not recognize the name until he opened the accompanying file. They were Nathan's colleagues, other cargo runners who traversed the outer fringe routes. "Director Klikesh," the message began, "we are the cargo community of Sector 7. We have been apprised of Nathan's benevolent endeavors for your children. That obstinate individual has been undertaking double shifts and foregoing meals to procure books and blankets for these youngsters. He neglected to inform anyone, for that is his nature. However, we are aware and wish to offer our assistance." The message included a manifest detailing contributions from dozens of cargo runners who had pooled their resources. They had dispatched games and toys, books and apparel, treats and treasures sourced from 100 different worlds. More significantly, they had provided something unprecedented: gifts thoughtfully personalized for each child. For Pip, whose fascination lay with tales of flight, there was a mobile comprised of miniature spacecraft models. For Krebel, captivated by light, a prism kit was included. For Whisker, a selection of puzzle games. For Tenna, art supplies, as someone had noted her habit of sketching in the dust with her claws. "How did they know?" Clash inquired of Nathan when he presented him with the manifest. Nathan's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "I may have mentioned them in my messages. I made no specific requests. I simply spoke about the children. They are all so engaging, you see. They possess individual personalities and dreams, and I surmised that perhaps if people were simply aware of them..." Clash finally understood. Nathan had accomplished what no government program, no charitable organization, no official initiative had managed. He had rendered these forgotten children tangible to individuals who had never encountered them. He had shared their narratives, their unique quirks, their aspirations, and in doing so, he had awakened something within others. This innate inclination to care for small beings they would never personally meet. The provisions arrived at 2300 hours station time. Nathan and Klikesh worked tirelessly through the night, meticulously filling the stockings with thoughtful care. Each gift was selected for a specific child, and each stocking became heavy with treasures and affection. As they labored, Clash posed the question that had been troubling him since Nathan's initial return to read stories. "Nathan, why did you return?" The truth. Nathan was quiet, carefully placing a small stuffed animal into Pip's stocking. "When I was 8 years old, my parents perished in a mining accident. I was placed within the system, moving between various households for 10 years. No one wanted a grieving child prone to nightmares and trust issues. I aged out at 18 with nothing but anger and a profound sense of loneliness." He looked up at Clash. "I became a cargo runner because I desired solitude. I wanted to be in space, where no one could disappoint me or abandon me. And then I walked in here and saw Pip looking at me with those eyes. I recognized that look. I had seen it in the mirror throughout my childhood. And I thought, perhaps I cannot rectify my past, but I can ensure these children have one positive memory. One day where they know, unequivocally, that someone cared." Klekesh's mandibles clicked softly. "You have gifted them far more than a single day, Nathan." They concluded their work at 500 hours. 73 stockings adorned the common room, each bulging with gifts and treats, each a testament to the profound impact one individual can have by deeming forgotten children worthy of notice. Nathan and Clash retreated to the director's office, their bodies weary, yet neither could muster the energy for sleep. They waited. At 6:30, the first gasp echoed, followed by another. Then a sound that had never before resonated within the sanctuary of lost souls during its 15 years of operation. Children laughing, children exclaiming with pure joy, children weeping tears of happiness. Nathan and Klikesh hurried to the common room. The scene that greeted them was a mesmerizing fusion of delightful chaos. Pip was embracing her stocking, her 6 limbs wrapped around it as she sobbed and laughed concurrently. The spacecraft mobile was already suspended above her bunk. Creel held his prism up to the light, projecting dancing rainbow patterns across the walls, while other children gleefully chased the colors. Whisker was already engrossed in a puzzle, her tail swishing with focused delight. Tenna clutched a set of professional art supplies to her chest, gazing at them as if they might vanish. However, it was not merely the gifts. It was the dawning realization that each of them had been individually considered. Someone had cared enough to select something uniquely special. For children who had perceived themselves as mere afterthoughts and burdens throughout their entire existence, this revelation was utterly transformative. Pip spotted Nathan and propelled herself towards him. Her small violet form collided with his chest, and she buried her face in his shirt. "You did this," she declared, her voice muffled. "You made magic a reality." Other children swarmed him, not demanding more, not asking for anything further, simply desiring proximity to the human who had recognized their inherent worthiness of love. Nathan lowered himself to the floor, allowing them to pile upon him, a vibrant collection of diverse species and sizes, all laughing, crying, and proudly displaying their treasures. Clash observed from the doorway. During his 15 years, he had processed hundreds of children, performing his duties with efficiency and diligence, but always with the implicit understanding that they were temporary charges, mere statistics within a flawed system. He had never allowed himself to perceive them as Nathan did, as unique individuals deserving of happiness. He had been profoundly mistaken. Over the subsequent weeks, a remarkable transformation occurred at the Sanctuary of Lost Souls. Other humans learned of Nathan's Christmas project and began to visit. They brought additional supplies, contributed more time, and offered increased attention. Most significantly, they began inquiring about adoption. In January, a human couple arrived, seeking a child to nurture. Click presented them with the files, the statistics, and the medical histories. They disregarded all of it and requested to meet the children. Upon meeting Pip, and being utterly captivated by her effervescent spirit and her 6-limbed embraces, they initiated the adoption process that very day. In February, a human educator arrived, seeking a child with a passion for learning. She encountered Krebel and was enthralled by his inquisitive questions about light and physics. She adopted him 3 months later. In March, a human couple specializing in the arts adopted Tenna, having recognized her artistic talent and the need for its careful cultivation. By June, 41 of the 73 children had been adopted into human families. While not all, it was a significant number that initiated a powerful trend. Other species took notice. If humans valued these children, perhaps they possessed inherent worth. Adoption applications began to arrive from Tegalian families, Dravenian clans, and Bravik communes. The sanctuary of lost souls evolved into something it had never been, a temporary haven rather than a permanent confinement, a place where children awaited weeks or months instead of years, a place imbued with hope. 1 year after that initial Christmas, Clash stood in his office reviewing his records. Of the original 73 children, only 8 remained, and all 8 had pending adoption applications undergoing processing. Nathan now visited on a weekly basis, having become an unofficial volunteer, guiding new arrivals in human customs and other traditions. More importantly, he had become living proof that a single individual could effect profound change. "Director Clash," Nathan remarked one day, as they observed the current cohort of children engaged in play in the common room, "I've been contemplating expanding this initiative. There are other orphanages situated along the outer fringe. What if we introduced them to the concept of Christmas as well?" Clash's mandibles clicked in what might have been an approximation of a smile. "What if we introduced them to more than just Christmas? What if we shared what you taught me? That these children are not problems to be managed, but individuals to be loved." Nathan nodded slowly. "We would require funding, organizational structure, an entire network." Click accessed a file on his data screen. "I have been contacted by 12 different human charitable organizations. They are eager to assist. They witnessed what transpired here and wish to replicate it. They've termed it the Christmas Stocking Initiative." "What does that signify?" "It signifies," Click replied, "that you have initiated something far grander than a single orphanage. It signifies that humanity has determined that alien orphans possess value. And when humanity decides something holds significance, the galaxy takes notice." The Christmas Stocking Initiative rapidly evolved into a galaxy-wide program. Within 2 years, human volunteers were visiting orphanages across known space, introducing children to traditions of gift-giving and love. Crucially, they remained. They became advocates for adoption, demanding improved funding and conditions, making an undeniable impact until governments and organizations that had long overlooked these children were compelled to pay attention. The Galactic Council, that august body governing interspecies relations, convened an emergency session to address this burgeoning phenomenon. The counselor from the Torgalian Collective stood before the assembly with an unusual proposal. "We move to grant humanity a seat on this council," she declared, "not for their military prowess or economic might, but for something far more significant. They have reminded us of what we had forgotten. They have demonstrated that the true measure of a civilization lies not in its technological advancements or territorial expanse, but in how it treats its most vulnerable members." The motion passed with unprecedented unanimity. Humanity, a relative newcomer to the galactic stage, earned a council seat not through conquest or commerce, but through an act of profound compassion. Nathan Brooks was invited to address the council during the ceremony. He stood before representatives of 47 species, speaking with his characteristic quiet sincerity. "I am not exceptional," he told them. "I am merely a cargo runner who encountered children in need of love. What I did, anyone could have done. The question is not whether we possess the capacity to help, but whether we have the willingness to acknowledge those who require assistance." He paused, his gaze sweeping across the assembled dignitaries. "Every species represented here has orphans. Every species has children who slip through the cracks of your systems. The humans did not solve this problem because we are superior to you. We addressed it because one human refused to look away, and then another, and then another. That is all it takes. Individuals who refuse to accept that suffering is an inevitable consequence." The council chamber fell silent. Then the Torgalian counselor initiated a slow, clicking applause, a customary expression of respect within her species. Other species joined in with their own distinct forms of approval. The human who had ignited this revolution with mere fabric, thread, and unwavering determination had just redefined the very meaning of power within the galactic community. 5 years after that inaugural Christmas, Nathan returned to the Sanctuary of Lost Souls. The facility bore little resemblance to its former self. The corridors were brighter, painted in cheerful hues. The common room was furnished with proper seating and strewn with toys. Most notably, it was nearly deserted. Only 3 children currently resided there, and all 3 had families scheduled to collect them within the month. Click greeted Nathan at the airlock, as he always had. However, the venerable director now moved with a slower gait, his mandibles showing the wear of age and prolonged service. "Nathan, my friend," Click said warmly. "Visiting to check in?" Nathan inquired. "I've come with news. I'm stepping down from my cargo hauling career." Clash's multifaceted eyes locked onto him with intense scrutiny. "Why?" Nathan produced a data slate. "Because I've been extended an offer. Director of the Christmas Stocking Initiative, Galactic Operations. It's a legitimate role with a proper salary and actual benefits." He continued, "My responsibility will be to oversee the network of volunteers across all orphanages in known space." "That's absolutely wonderful, Nathan. You've earned it." Nathan's smile broadened. "There's more. I'm adopting." Clash became utterly motionless. "Who?" "There's a young Philithar child at the sanctuary on Kilos 3. She's 6 years old, adores books, and has been waiting 3 years for a family. Her name is Whisper. I met her last month, and she asked if I knew any tales about dragons. I told her I knew countless. She then asked if I would return and share them. I agreed, and I've been visiting weekly ever since." Nathan's eyes were unnaturally bright. "Last week she asked if I would leave, like everyone else eventually does. I reassured her I wouldn't, that I intended to remain indefinitely if she wished. She inquired about my meaning. I told her I wanted to be her father. Before I even finished speaking, she said, 'Yes.'" Clash felt that peculiar sensation in his thorax once more, the one that always accompanied his interactions with Nathan. His species was incapable of shedding tears, yet his voice was thick with emotion. "You're going to be a father." "I'm terrified," Nathan admitted. "I haven't the faintest idea what I'm doing. I never had a positive role model, but I figure I can't do worse than having no one. She deserves someone who will be present daily, share dragon stories, and ensure she feels profoundly loved." "You will be an exceptional father," Clash stated with unwavering conviction. "You already are. You spearheaded a movement that saved thousands of children. One more will be incredibly fortunate to have you." They stood in comfortable silence, observing the 3 remaining children at play. One of them, a small scaler named Flicker, noticed Nathan and scurried over, clutching a drawing. "Mr. Nathan, look. I drew you, me, and Director Clickesh, and we're all on a spaceship off to adventures." Nathan knelt, examining the artwork with earnest attention. "This is magnificent, Flicker. You are a truly gifted artist. May I keep it?" Flicker's scales flushed with pride. "Yes, I made it for you because you're kind, and you always come back." "I always will," Nathan promised. "That's what friends do." Flicker gave him a swift embrace and darted back to her play. Nathan carefully folded the drawing, tucking it into his pocket with evident tenderness. Clash observed this exchange and grasped something profound. Nathan hadn't rescued these children through grand gestures or boundless resources. He had saved them by seeing them, by being present, by upholding his promises. He had saved them by treating them as if they mattered, because to him, they truly did. The human species possessed many qualities that impressed the galaxy: their ingenuity, their resolve, their capacity to adapt and overcome. But perhaps their most potent trait was this: their ability to love without prejudice. To gaze upon a young alien child from a species they had only just encountered and think, "You are significant to me." That was the genuine wonder Nathan brought to the Sanctuary of Lost Souls. Not Christmas, not stockings, not gifts. The magic lay in the notion that everyone deserves to be acknowledged, to be valued, to awaken knowing someone cares about their happiness. 10 years after that initial Christmas, the Sanctuary of Lost Souls officially ceased operations. Not due to tragedy or financial shortfall, but because there were no longer any children requiring its services. The adoption rate had achieved 100% efficacy. Children entering the system were matched with families within mere weeks. Pleesh retired to a tranquil colony world, where he penned a book recounting his experiences, It subsequently became mandatory reading in social services programs across the galaxy. The concluding chapter was titled, "The Human Who Taught Us to See." Nathan Brooks dedicated 20 years as the director of the Christmas Stocking Initiative before retiring to dedicate himself to raising Whisper, and, subsequently, 3 more children he adopted over time. His family was a delightful melange of species, needs, and affection that perplexed census takers but charmed everyone they encountered. The tradition of Christmas stockings extended beyond orphanages. Families throughout the galaxy embraced the practice, hanging stockings for their offspring regardless of species or homeworld. It evolved into a universally recognized symbol, representing the fundamental idea that every being deserves a morning of joy and surprise. The Galactic Council officially designated December 25th as a recognized holiday, not compulsory, but an optional observance that any species could choose to celebrate. They christened it Remembrance Day, a time to honor those who needed assistance and to commend those who provided it. On the 50th anniversary of that inaugural Christmas at the Sanctuary of Lost Souls, now an empty edifice preserved as a museum, the council convened a ceremony. Representatives from every species were in attendance, along with many of the original 73 children, now grown adults with families of their own. Pip, who had become a successful aerospace engineer, addressed the assembled multitude. Her 6 limbs gestured expressively as she recounted waking up on that fateful morning to find her stocking filled. "I believed it was an error," she stated. "I thought someone would realize they had distributed gifts to the wrong children and reclaim them." However, Nathan remained with us throughout the day, ensuring we understood that the gifts were genuinely ours. He made certain we knew we were truly wanted. She paused, her golden eyes scanning the crowd. "That day transformed my existence, not because of the toys or treats, though they were wonderful. It changed me because, for the first time, I comprehended that I possessed worth, that someone in this immense galaxy deemed me worthy of the effort. Every success I've achieved, every aspiration I've fulfilled originated from that realization." Pribble spoke next. His crystalline form now bore the intricate patterns of age and experience. He had become a physicist. His research into light manipulation had garnered prestigious accolades. "Nathan presented me with a prism that Christmas," Pribble recounted. "Such a simple object, yet it demonstrated to me that light could be transmuted, that it could conjure beauty from nothing. That lesson became the cornerstone of his life's work. But more significantly," he added, "Nathan showed me that people, too, could be transformed. We were broken children in a forgotten place, and he reshaped us into individuals who believed we merited happiness." Tenna, the artist whose creations now graced galleries across 3 sectors, shared her own remembrance. "I would draw in the dirt because I possessed no other canvas. Nathan provided me with actual art supplies and told me I was talented. No one had ever uttered such words before. He didn't merely furnish me with art supplies. He granted me the liberty to aspire beyond mere survival." One by one, the original 73 shared their narratives. They were engineers and educators, artists and scientists, parents and leaders. Each and every one traced their achievements back to that Christmas morning when they learned they held significance. Nathan, now elderly, but still sharp-eyed and smiling, absorbed it all with his characteristic modesty. When invited to speak, he rose slowly, his 4 adopted children offering steadying support with palpable affection. "I didn't accomplish anything extraordinary," he said, his voice still robust despite his advanced age. "I observed children who were in need of love, and I offered them mine. That is not heroic. It is simply human." He surveyed the assembled gathering, the diverse species who had convened in this place. "But perhaps that is the essence of it all. Perhaps being human is not about being exceptional or superior. Perhaps it is about recognizing that we are all merely beings striving to endure in a challenging galaxy, and perhaps we endure more effectively when we extend aid to one another." The ceremony concluded with a tradition that had commenced decades prior. Everyone present hung a stocking, even the adults, the council members, and the museum curator, who felt compelled to explain that, technically, affixing items to historical artifacts was not permitted. Yet, evidently, tradition superseded preservation regulations, and on the subsequent morning, every stocking was filled. Not with expensive gifts or rare treasures, but with simple tokens, confectionery and small toys, handwritten notes, and handcrafted items. The galaxy's inhabitants had assimilated Nathan's lesson profoundly. The value resided not in the monetary cost, but in the sentiment, in the gesture of caring enough to fill a stocking for another. Whisper, Nathan's eldest adopted daughter, now a mother herself, stood with her father within the museum. Her own daughter, a small Philithar kit named Hope, clutched a stocking that Whisper had fashioned for her. "Papa Nathan?" Hope inquired, gazing up at her grandfather with wide eyes. "Is it true that you initiated all of this?" Nathan knelt, his old knees protesting the movement, but his heart overflowed. "I hung some stockings a long time ago," he said gently, "but I didn't start this. Love initiated this. The innate desire to care for one another began it. I merely served as a reminder that it existed." Hope pondered this with a child's earnestness. Then she hugged him with fierce intensity. "I'm glad you remembered, because now I have a mama, a papa, a grandpa, cousins, and friends, and everyone hangs stockings, and no one is alone." Nathan embraced her in return. This small alien child who called him Grandpa made him reflect on those 73 children who had hung empty stockings with fragile hope 50 years ago. They were no longer empty. None of them were. Not the stockings, not the hearts, not the lives. The galaxy had learned that morning what humans had always understood, that love was not predicated on biology, species, profit, or logic. Love was about being present, about recognizing someone in need of care and deeming them worthy of the effort, about filling stockings not out of obligation, but because somewhere, someone deserved to greet the day with happiness. The human characteristic that revolutionized the galaxy was not their technology, their warfare, or their diplomacy. It was their steadfast, illogical, beautiful insistence that every individual mattered, that no child should face the morning alone, that empty stockings ought to be filled. And 50 years after Nathan Brooks walked into an orphanage and saw children worthy of love, the galaxy finally comprehended what humanity had been endeavoring to impart all along. At times, the most potent force is not the capacity for destruction, conquest, or domination. At times, the greatest power lies in the ability to care. And when you impart that power to others, when you demonstrate how to acknowledge the overlooked and cherish the unwanted, you don't merely alter lives, you transform the galaxy. Nathan Brooks passed away peacefully at the age of 93, surrounded by his children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, a sprawling family tree encompassing 8 distinct species, and an immeasurable amount of love that no lineage chart could adequately document. His funeral was attended by thousands. The Galactic Council observed a moment of solemn silence. Orphanages across known space displayed stockings in his honor. Children who had never encountered him personally created drawings depicting a kind human who had imparted compassion to the galaxy. Yet, his true legacy was not etched in monuments or ceremonies. It resided in the millions of children who retired to sleep each December 24th with stockings hung and hearts brimming with hope. It was evident in the families who chose to adopt across species boundaries, having learned that love transcends biological origins. It was present in the volunteers who generously donated their time, having been shown by one human that time invested in others is never wasted. It was palpable in every morning a child awoke to find their stocking overflowing and understood profoundly and unequivocally that someone in this vast galaxy cared about their well-being. That was Nathan's enduring gift. Not stockings, toys, or traditions, but the simple, revolutionary concept that every being deserves to be loved. And when humans resolve that something merits love, they bestow it with an intensity that reshapes existence itself. Whisper, speaking at her father's funeral, articulated it best. "My father was not a warrior, a politician, or a visionary. He was a cargo runner who saw children and decided they were significant. In a galaxy that quantifies worth by power and profit, he measured it by whether someone smiled. That was his defiance. That was his revolution." She held aloft a well-worn purple stocking adorned with silver stars. It was the very stocking Pip had crafted 50 years prior and presented to Nathan as a gift. This stocking was empty when it was made, representing a hope that lacked any basis for existence. "But my father filled it," Whisper continued, "and in filling it, he filled all of us. He taught us that we were not vacant vessels awaiting disposal. We were treasures awaiting discovery." The galaxy absorbed that lesson, from that inaugural Christmas at the Sanctuary of Lost Souls to every subsequent December 25th. The lesson propagated. Empty stockings were filled. Empty hearts were replenished. Lives devoid of purpose were infused with meaning and affection, and the profound knowledge that somewhere, someone cared. And that is the true marvel of Christmas. Not the gifts, decorations, or established customs, though they are indeed wonderful. The genuine magic lies in the profound transformation that occurs when you determine that another's happiness holds the same importance as your own. Humanity contributed numerous advancements to the galaxy: technology and art, music and literature, innovations and conceptual frameworks. However, their most significant contribution was this: they taught the galaxy how to love unconditionally, without expectation, without limitation. They demonstrated to the galaxy that sometimes the most formidable action one can take is to fill a stocking for a child who has never received one, and then to be present the following day, and the day after that, until that child comprehends they are not alone. That is humanity's authentic strength, not their starships, weaponry, or keen intellects, impressive though they may be. Their true fortitude lies in their absolute, stubborn, and illogical refusal to permit anyone to be forgotten. Their unwavering resolve that every being, regardless of their size, their differences, or their perceived lack of desirability, deserves to awaken with happiness at least once. And when you bestow that gift upon a sufficient number of individuals, when you fill an adequate quantity of stockings, hearts, and lives, you don't merely alter individuals, you transform civilizations. You fundamentally alter the very nature of interspecies interaction. You change everything. 73 orphaned aliens hung empty stockings, filled with tentative hope. They awoke to discover them brimming with presents. However, the true gift was not contained within the stockings themselves. The genuine gift was the human who filled them, and the invaluable lesson he imparted through his actions. Everyone deserves to be perceived. Everyone deserves to be valued. Everyone deserves to wake up knowing that someone, somewhere, cares. That is the message that resonated throughout the galaxy for generations following Nathan Brooks's final breath. That is the legacy that outlasted empires, treaties, and wars. That is the revolution ignited by fabric and thread and a single human's refusal to abandon children in need of love. Empty stockings were filled, and in filling them, humanity imbued the galaxy with hope, and thus concluded the narrative. If you have listened this far, please remember to share your thoughts on the story in the comments section, whether positive or negative. Your feedback is instrumental in our ongoing improvement. Kindly also bestow a like and subscribe to the channel for more narratives of this nature. I will now display another video on the screen that I am confident you will find engaging. A warm embrace, and until we meet again in the next installment.